Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Silent Paths, Wild Hearts. Episode 5. Chapter 31. Helios POV made my wolves and my voice went out through the link. To my surprise, she smiled knowingly and said, "I know how." I asked. "It's a long story. So you keep saying." I couldn't help the hurt that came out of me. She knew. That meant she'd known this whole time. She pushed me away knowing I was her mate. What had she planned to do? Wait until she was leaving before rejecting me? Is that why she is still here? Ezekiel howled in the back of my mind. After I shifted trying to save Celeste, I had recognized his voice as the one that I had heard in the darkness. It was certainly something I would have to get used to, having a companion inside my head. Helios. Why is this happening? Theo's voice came through the link. I hesitated for a moment before I turned around. Natalia was a conversation that would have to wait. I owed an explanation to my friends. I had made a decision that affected all of us, but I had not been given the chance to ask them if this was something they wanted. "I'm coming," I answered. I walked towards my friends. Jillian and Danny were looking at me strangely. They inclined their heads slightly when we arrived. I felt as Ezekiel retreated to the back of my mind and I felt my body shift back to my human form. "Can you guys switch back?" I asked. They shook their heads. "I don't think they know how," Jillian said. "Can you guide them?" I asked. "We tried, but we can't talk to them, so we can't understand why they can't shift back," Danny explained. "You have the aura of an alpha, Helios. Try to command them to shift back," Jillian said. "How do I command them?" I asked, rubbing my forehead from the migraine that wanted to explode. "I'll ask Marcus," Danny said. I waited when his eyes glazed over. A minute later, his eyes cleared. He said, "You need to request it with intention. Think about what you want them to do when you ask it of them. Feel the authority behind your words. I can help you." Ezekiel said, "Just think of it like you're plugging another control into the console and pass it to me. It will allow me to come forward, but not all the way. I can feel the pack connection to our friends. Their wolves are trying to help, but they are freaking out." I tried to imagine what he said and I suddenly felt as if he was right next to me. "Shift," we said. Slowly, I saw their bones and bodies contort back to their human forms. "Why is this happening so much slower than me?" I asked Danny. "Their shifting is actually more normal speed for a first change. It hurts and takes a few minutes. It gets easier after that until it no longer feels like you're breaking. I honestly don't know what is going on, so I don't know why you're shifting faster." "Because we are Seleni's brothers," Ezekiel answered in my head. It was 3 agonizing minutes as I watched my friends' bodies contort painfully back into human form. They were panting and sweating. When it was done, Theo and Sebastian looked at each other and embraced. Sebastian grabbed Theo's face and kissed him with a ferocity that made me long for that kind of love. "We have that kind of love. We have a mate. Even if they lied to us," Ezekiel said. My heart beat a little faster, but I didn't want to think about why they lied to us. It hurt to even think about Natalia rejecting me. I looked over at Jillian and Danny, who were smiling. I think they are mates? They were sniffing each other once the moon peaked, Danny said. I nodded. So what happened? Why are we suddenly all shifters? Gonzalo asked once his shock was over. I sighed and called over Celeste, who was sitting just a bit away. I had no doubt she knew what was going on. She hadn't looked surprised when I shifted. Selene talked to me. After that last torture session, my spirit went to a platform with her. I looked over at the building behind us. The noises had stopped, and by how calm everyone was, I could tell we had won. This isn't the end. There's a much bigger corporation in charge. This is just a branch of it. I will give you all the details I know later. She gave me a choice. I could stay as I am, or I could merge with one of my brothers. One of the ones I had killed. Because they were killed with the crystal dagger, they aren't able to be reborn, to cycle back into another human. I looked down in shame. I felt Ezekiel's strength flow through me and I continued my story. The catch was that whatever choice I made, would be yours. You are all tied to me. All of my warriors. You've lived as long as I have because your life force is connected to mine. We thought it was because of my sister, but it was because of me. When I accepted to merge with my brother's wolf, you also got a wolf. I put my hand through my hair. I wanted to give you a chance to decide, but there was no time. I'm sorry. When she told me that we would all change on the next full moon, I hadn't realized it was so close. So, the magic we thought was hers, for why we never aged. Theo said. Mine, she said. When you swore your servitude after the battle, my life force became entwined with yours. It explains why I always felt when one of you died. Is everyone like this? Even the ones that left you? Gonzalo asked. Everyone that is left, yes. We should send an email. Explain what is happening. Some may not have shifted yet if they aren't in the same hemisphere. We thought we were going crazy, hearing our wolves, he said. I winced. Sorry. Stop apologizing. You made the right choice. We can help better as shifters. We've always been a little jealous of the shifters. I'd be angry if it meant Theo and I couldn't. He trailed off as he looked lovingly at Theo, but it's clear that Selene approves. He grinned at me. I started feeling a dull ache in my chest. It didn't feel like any of my own body aches from going through the torture sessions. My head went up to my chest, trying to rub the uncomfortable sensation. Mate is pushing her healing too much. She's going to hurt herself, Ezekiel said. I felt her eyes on me, like a physical touch. I looked over to the garage. Thanks to the floodlights, I could see her kneeling next to one of the cages. We made eye contact, but she said nothing. She hadn't tried to link me since she found out I was a wolf now. Pain went through me like a jolt of lightning. Are you still immortal? Gonzalo asked. Yes, none of that has changed. I turned to look at him. Helios, she won't stop healing. She is going to make herself pass out. Go to our mate. Ezekiel growled. Gonzalo, can you send an email explaining the changes? Let them know they can come to us if they wish. Selene said, we're still connected, we're a pack now. Tell them they can come home if they want. I have to go stop my mate from hurting herself. Gonzalo smirked, good luck. I sighed and nodded, not even bothering to address the fact that none of them seemed surprised I had a mate. I started making my way to the garage. The closer I got, the more I felt her exhaustion. She ignored my request to take a break, only to practically pass out as she stood up. I felt the sparks burst down my body as I picked her up. I realized this was similar to what I've been feeling for the past month every time I touched her. She must have felt them like this, and never said anything. I held my breath as I wondered if she would push off, but felt relief and hope when she leaned into me instead. Marcus nodded at me as he climbed onto the bus again. I knew we would have a long conversation when we returned. We chatted for a bit before we drove back in silence. Natalia had fallen asleep in my arms and I couldn't take my eyes off her. You look like you think she's going to disappear in your arms, Gonzalo mind-linked. I was startled a bit, still getting used to it. I felt his laughter in my head, that was pretty much our reaction when we realized we could do it. It's going to take some getting used to for sure. I sighed, I think she is going to reject me. Why would you think that? Isn't the mate bond something every wolf cherishes? We were mated before tonight. I've been feeling the sparks, although muted all month. When I told her we were mates, she said she knew. She never said anything. I think she was planning on leaving without telling me at all, or she was going to reject me before she left. My voice broke when I said the words reject me. The pain Ezekiel and I felt at the thought was sharp. He howled in my head at the thought. Maybe she has her reasons. We know almost nothing about her, he said. Yet, like the fact that she can't die. I said ruefully. What? Is that a white wolf thing? I don't know. She told me in the middle of the fight. Said it was a long story. You guys really need to have a long chat. She just found out you were immortal the day you got taken. The only way Celeste stopped her from running off after you was to tell her who you were. She was desperate to find you. His words made my heart beat faster as I looked down at my sleeping mate again. Gonzalo sighed, I know you better than anyone, Helios. Don't get pinned on what's happened and miss out on what could. Give her a chance. Remember, her priority was the safety of the young girls. We weren't exactly forthcoming about ourselves either. Don't go into this already assuming she's going to reject you. I considered his words for the next 2 hours. He was right, even before the mate bond, when I knew I loved her, I thought there was no way she would accept me. I needed to listen to those around me. I needed to convince her to give me a chance. Helios POV Natalia has been sleeping for a few days now. The doctor said she was fine, she just pushed herself too far. I haven't been able to leave the room after the first day for very long. Ezekiel demands that I be near her and I agree with him. I've become addicted to her scent. Anytime I've tried to leave the room, I can't even function. After trying to answer their questions and failing miserably that first night, Celeste had dragged everyone into Natalia's bedroom and sat me near her bed. It was a struggle not to pull her into my lap, but I was trying to respect her space. I told everyone of my visit with Selene before they arrived and all that I discovered while at the lab. Marcus suggested we stay with Crescent Moon for a few months to get adjusted to wolf life. I was technically an alpha and my warriors were my pack members. I wasn't keen on the idea that Theo, Gonzalo, and Sebastian were back to being under me, but they said it was actually a relief. Being in charge wasn't really for them. As long as I gave them the respect and voice I've always given them, they happily took to the roles they had always unofficially had at my side. Gonzalo as my beta and Theo and Sebastian as my gammas. We've already received a few emails back from my other warriors. A few had chosen to stay where they were and find a local pack, but most were on their way here. Then we discussed the issue of the rescued shifters. Marcus had contacted the council to let them know of the situation and for help to find their families. The ones that were rescued from the research lab mostly spoke English. We had managed to get the ones from the compound to start talking. Only one we still couldn't communicate with. They were all pretty traumatized, and they had been asking for Natalia since she had healed all of them. When we had to explain why she wasn't able to come down, a few had gotten very agitated. I had to promise to tell her when she woke so that they could see her. The bigger problem was the vampire. We requested the council to contact the vampire royal family to advise them of what was happening. We were waiting to hear back from them and, in the meantime, we had to put the vampire in the dungeon to protect him from daylight and to protect the pack from him at night until his mental health was assessed. Marcus was relieved the vampire took the news calmly, and as long as we allowed him some fresh air after nightfall and provided him with blood, he was grateful to be rescued and would wait for his king and queen to fetch for him. Marcus had allowed me to bring a desk into Natalia's room. I was working from here, though I tried to step away when I needed to speak over the phone. The insurance company had demanded a video conference and I had to use the offices downstairs for it. I also contacted a realtor. I would not be needing to rebuild my house. I needed to find a place big enough for my new pack. Sebastian and Theo were also putting their penthouse on the market, and Gonzalo had only rented his, so we decided to keep the lease for overnights at the office. I'd finally caved and asked Theo to buy a plane. We would need it to keep our business going, and while most could be done remotely, meeting with clients would require us to fly into San Diego from time to time. I had done all of this from Natalia's room. After the first night trying to sleep in my own room, I had just given up and moved the couch to the side of her bed. I couldn't sleep otherwise. I was practically living, no scratch that, I was living in Natalia's room. I was sleeping on the couch on the fourth night when I was woken by a scream and I felt hands land hard on my chest. I instinctively gripped the wrist on my chest half asleep. I felt sparks explode and my heart soared knowing she was awake. What I heard her melodious voice shrieking almost near my ear. I released her hands when I was sure she wouldn't face plant and I got up and turned on the light. She was sitting on the side of the bed, looking around at everything but me. When she ran out of things to look at, she finally looked at me. I couldn't quite read her face. I sighed and walked back to the couch. I had a lot of time to think as I watched her sleep. I couldn't live without her. I needed her to give me a chance. "You've been how long?" we both said at the same time after minutes of awkward silence. We sat in silence for another minute before I sighed and tried again. "You have been asleep for 5 days. You pushed yourself too far with your gift." She nodded. "That happens. Anger was rising inside me at the flippant remark regarding her health, but I tampered them down. You didn't yell at someone to be careful before you were going to ask them to give you a chance to love them. She stood up quickly. I need a shower. She hesitated. Can you wait for me? I think we have an overdue talk. I could only nod. I hadn't planned on going anywhere until we talked. In fact, I hoped I never had to go anywhere she wasn't again. She came back out and sat on the bed again. The people you healed want to talk to you when you're up for it, I said, and we fell into silence again. We just looked at each other. All I wanted to do was to touch her. To kiss her now that she was awake. Are you going to reject me? She asked quietly. To say I was surprised was an understatement. My jaw almost dropped to the floor. Me reject you? Are you kidding me right now? You think I will reject you? I'm not the one that didn't tell her mate about their bond. Don't tell me you weren't planning to reject me, when you basically did that any time I tried to get close to you. Ezekiel growled in my head. I had not meant to start our talk by accusing her. We had talked while she slept and decided that we would let her talk before we made our case. I thought she would yell back, as was our usual sequence, and prepared myself for her wrath. Instead, she looked down at her hands. I know, she said, surprising me, but you need to understand. Having a mate when you're essentially immortal, you watch them grow old while you stay the same. Then you watch them die. You feel the bond snap. I've been through 4 bond snaps. I have rejected another 5. The rejections are easier to get over than the break of the bond after you've spent their lifetime forging it with them. My heart broke for her. This was one of the first times that she'd told me about herself and I was not prepared for it. I could not imagine losing her and I understood why she had wanted to walk away. I had been ready to walk away at the start and that hurt, but I thought I could do it. Then the pain I felt when I thought I might lose her after I'd felt her love had almost crippled me. I was going to reject you that first night. We smelled you at the docks, you know. We recognized that it would be our mate. When I smelled you again at that auction, that's why I reacted so angry at first. I thought you were the reason why they were kidnapping us, being a buyer. I had already decided to reject you from the moment we met, and I planned to reject you every day up until that day when I yelled at you, she continued. Which time? I joked. Ezekiel laughed in my head but put his tail between his legs at the way Natalia was glaring at us. Sorry, continue, I said, clearing my throat awkwardly. The day I found out you had kidnapped Celeste. Part of the reason I freaked out as bad as I did was Hestia's jealousy and mine when we thought you kidnapped her because you were in love with her. Another part of that was that I wanted to believe you were an evil man, because that would make it easier to reject you. After you ran off, I talked to Celeste. She gave me a vague explanation of what had happened to you. I realized what I've been to you, just trying to convince myself you were someone I could walk away from. She wiped a tear and laughed. Then I thought you were dying and I realized I love you, but once I was facing a future with you, my same fear of losing you, came running back in and I purposely said words that would make you walk away, because I knew I couldn't do it of my own volition anymore. How is it that you're immortal? Is that a white wolf thing? I asked. I wanted to grab her and hold her, but we needed to get everything out in the open. This conversation should have happened a month ago. No, she laughed, that was a stupid person in pain meeting a jinn thing. I didn't really need more explanation than that. I had met jinns in my travels and was well aware of their trickster nature. Still, Natalia told me her story. After she put all her cards on the table, it was my turn. I told her everything. From what I'd done for a millennium to my visit with my sister before she showed up at the lab. When I finished, her mouth was hanging open slightly in shock as she processed everything I'd said. I stayed seated on the couch, waiting for her to say something. Ezekiel was whimpering and pacing in the back of my head, wondering if, now that she knew the extent of my actions, she would choose to reject us for what I'd done. Finally, I couldn't take her silence anymore and I repeated her question. Are you going to reject me? I asked. She looked me in the eye for a while before a slow, gorgeous smile began to grace her lips. She got up from the bed and sat down next to me. I was actually asking myself if I was ready to be a Luna. But no, Helios. I don't think I could reject you if I tried, she said before she grabbed the front of my shirt and pulled me over towards her, crashing her lips into mine. Ezekiel howled with joy in the back of my mind. My response was instantaneous. I pushed forward until she was on her back on the couch and I had her caged between my arms. I growled as I pressed my body to hers, feeling drunk on the sparks that burst from every point our bodies touched. This elicited a delicious moan from her, and I used the parting of her lips to plunge my tongue past her sweet lips. Her hands pushed my shirt up as her hands roamed my back. My entire body shivered. I didn't stop the kiss until we needed air. I could hear her inhale mouthfuls of air in between her moans as I trailed my lips down her jaw. I kissed at the skin there, the need to mark her rising. Ezekiel was trying to push forward to doing it. Knowing that it was another conversation we needed to have, I left the spot and headed downwards towards her chest, but not before I left an unmistakable mark where our permanent mark would one day go. Natalia POV. I was lost in the bliss of having Helios wait on me. I didn't want to move from this moment. After everything it took to get us here, I just wanted to bask in this moment with my mate. My mate. The one that wouldn't leave. I was combing my hand through his hair and thought he might be falling asleep when he asked, "So is that a yes?" My hand stilled and I looked down at him. He turned his head to look up at me, placing his chin between the valley of my breasts, a lazy lopsided smile on his face. "Yes to what?" I asked. "You said you were asking yourself if you were ready to be a Luna," he said. I laughed, I forgot about that. I heaved a deep sigh and he planted a soft sweet kiss on the side of my breast. "I don't know if I'll be any good at being a Luna, Helios, but I know I can't stay away from you anymore. So, all I can say is I'll give it my best shot, for you." Helios pulled himself up until he was hovering over me. He looked into my eyes with so much love and adoration that it made my eyes water. I hadn't felt that kind of love in a long time. He finally bent down and kissed me. It was slow and sensual and said so much more than words could have. He stood up after and held his hand out to me. I took his hand, wondering what he wanted. He pulled me up and my legs were still shaky. He noticed, he grinned. "Mission accomplished," he teased before picking me up and carrying me into the bathroom. He turned on the bath and we enjoyed a hot bath together. We talked until the water got cold. He told me we were staying at Crescent Moon while we found a place to build our pack grounds and so he could learn from Marcus. I thought it was a good plan and thought maybe I could also learn from Celeste about being a Luna. After the bath, we went to sleep. We woke up to knocking on the door a few hours later. Helios was a mess of limbs. His leg was tangled with mine and his arm was across my chest, just under my breasts. His head was using my breast as a pillow. He rubbed a hand down his face as he sat up. There was another knock on the door. I sat up and pulled my shirt down from where it had ridden up. Helios got up and went to his phone on a desk I don't remember having in here before we left to rescue him. He pulled his shirt over his head as I put my legs over the side of the bed. "Come in," I said. Marcus opened the door. He was holding one of his pups in his arms and walked in like he did this every day. Celeste followed behind him with a pup on her hip and a plate on the other. "Nat. I'm so glad you're awake. Here, you eat this. I'll have someone bring an extra plate up for Helios," she said as she went over to the seat on the couch next to Marcus. I walked over and grabbed the plate from her. I'm munching on a sausage as I sit on the love seat and take a good look around at what's happening. "Why are you eating in here?" I asked Helios. Marcus smirked as Helios' face went red. "And why does it look like a studio apartment in here?" Helios looked really uncomfortable now. I looked at Marcus and Celeste for an answer. Marcus is still smirking while Celeste is trying to hide her smile. I was worried about you," Helios answered. "So you moved in?" I asked, pretending to be confused when really my heart was soaring. Hestia was purring in my head at the thought that our mate wouldn't leave our side while we recovered from the drain the healing caused to our body. Helios stuttered. It is normal for an alpha to be more concerned over his mate. Our instincts are more primal than a normal wolf, Marcus bailed him out. You had us all worried, Nat. You slept a long time. I know you said you couldn't die, but it doesn't mean we aren't allowed to worry. Celeste also defended him. But you lived out of a room with a sleeping person for almost a week? That's a little creepy, Helios. I teased. Nat, you're going to make his face explode. Celeste chides, and I can't keep it in any longer and I start chuckling. Marcus starts laughing with me and little Belarose starts wiggling in his lap, asking to be let down. The little girl grabbed hold of the couch and walked to the end near the desk. She let go of the couch and wobbled for a few moments as she steadied herself. She took a couple of tentative steps and then stumbled the last few steps to Helios who was already waiting for her. Just as he picked her up, she grabbed his face with her little hands and gave his cheek a slobbery, intense open-mouth kiss on his cheek. Well, it was either a kiss or she was trying to eat his face. Hestia was purring non-stop in the back of my head and I could feel my ovaries twitch. I tamped down the feelings. We haven't even talked about marking each other, let alone having children and how that would work with two immortals. Thankfully, Theo showed up with a plate of food for Helios and then grabbed little Cory from Celeste. Camilla is looking for you. Something about a contractor, he said. Celeste jumped up and ran off with a quick goodbye. I passed by the conference room. Evergreen thinks he'll have cracked the security encryption soon, he told Helios and Marcus, who nodded. He went over and sat on Celeste's now empty seat and began playing with little Cory. It's about time. He's been working on that thing for days. I was beginning to think he was losing his edge with Valeria being so close to delivering, Marcus said. I finished eating breakfast and looked around the room. It felt crowded with the desk in here and the couch in the wrong place. If we were staying here for a few months, I was going to have a talk with Helios. We'll let you two get ready. Nat, the shifters in the basement want to see you. They are still fairly wary of the fact that you saved them, healed them, and then disappeared. It would go a long way to get them to trust us, if they see you're not dead. Marcus said as he got up and took Bellerose from Helios, who was happily chewing on a piece of pancake, syrup smeared all over her little cheeks and hands. He chuckled as she fed him the piece of pancake. Theo, can you bring Cory? She'll get both of us sticky by the time we get to my room. Theo nodded and followed him out the door. When the door clicked shut, I turned to Helios. He was looking at me with his arms crossed. He looked grumpy and adorable. I made my way towards him and I saw his frown soften slightly. I stepped between his legs and wrapped my arms around his neck. What's wrong? I asked him. I wasn't trying to be creepy, he pouted. I leaned down and kissed him, doing my best not to laugh. If it makes you feel better, Hestia, and I think it is really sweet, I said, and I could feel Hestia's approval at conveying her opinion to her mate. His arms finally unfolded and he put his hands on my hips and pressed his head on my stomach. He was silent for a moment. I spent every day wondering if you would reject me the moment you woke up. Ezekiel wouldn't stop howling. He wanted to spend as long as we could near you before you sent us away. I couldn't even fight him. I've done a lot of bad things in my life. I would deserve it if you rejected me. I just wanted to memorize your face and scent before we went back to being alone. Even that sounds creepy to me. He buried his face into my stomach and gripped me closer to him. Hestia howled in my head as my heart clenched, knowing he spent days waiting for me to wake up to reject him. I'd really do with his head. I would just have to show him how much I loved him slowly. I would have to convince him that I had been ready to face the biggest heartbreak just to spend one lifetime with him, before I'd even realized he was my forever. I would have to show him that he was more than I deserved. We remained in each other's arms for a few minutes in silence, then he pulled his head up. We should go see the shifters. The council is going to be here in a few weeks and it would help if they were more at ease. Okay. I'll get changed. You should bring the rest of your clothes in here, but we should get the couch back in place and the desk out of here. It will get cramped quickly, otherwise I didn't get a chance to finish. Helios' face lit up with happiness and he crushed his lips to mine. After we came up for air, he pressed his forehead to mine and said, I'll put everything back the way it was, Amor. Thank you. I smiled. Go change. We have responsibilities, Alpha. He chuckled and squeezed me as he headed towards the door. I shook my head and went into the closet to grab a change of clothes. I wasn't sure if I was ready for everything that being his mate meant, but I was willing to learn if it meant spending my life with a man like him. I want to meet Ezekiel, Hestia said. You will? We'll ask him about going for a run later. We have an eternity with our mates. I said, feeling happier than I've felt in decades. Helios POV. I smiled as I walked down the hallway to get changed and gather the rest of my clothes. She was giving me a chance and she wanted me to move into her room. We would earn her love and trust and then we would ask if she would let us mark her. I gathered all of my clothes back into a duffel bag. I hadn't bought much since I was rescued and all of my clothes had gone up in smoke when the house exploded. Theo had bought these for me when we got back. I would need to buy more things before the council arrived. I would have to meet with them, considering I was a new alpha and we were to be a new pack. I wasn't sure how it would all work just yet, but I was trying to deal with things as they came. Selene never warned me about all the paperwork. I walked back towards Natalia's room when I heard her talking to someone. I walked in and saw Gonzalo sitting on the computer. He noticed the duffel bag and smirked. I'm forwarding the security feeds from the new office. I want to see if we can figure out who's been helping the black market use our imports to bring in shifters. I have a theory I want to check, he said. Do we need to worry about that? We technically brought down the entire US branch, Natalia asked. I want Evergreen to put his malware on the culprit's personal phone. I want to make sure we get all the loose ends. We can't give them any stumps from which they can rebuild. Those shifters downstairs, no one should go through what they've gone through. I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. Run with it. Whatever you need. They can't get away with what they've done. We'll make sure what happened to those people never happens to anyone again, I told him. I dropped my duffel bag in the closet. That should give me access from my computer. I'll get out of your hair. He stands and starts walking towards the door when he turns and addresses Natalia. Nice to see you up and well, Luna. He winks at me and walks out. I turn to look at Natalia, who is looking flustered. She was wiping her hands on the side of her pants as if she didn't know what to do with her hands. I sighed. Just ignore him. We're all learning what it means to be a pack. He was trying to be encouraging, not overwhelm you. You don't have to be Luna yet. I walked over to her and kissed her forehead. I don't want her to get overwhelmed and push me away again. It's just going to take some getting used to, she said, and wrapped her arms around me. I gave her a quick full body squeeze before I let her go. Let's go see the shifters, I said. She nodded and we headed downstairs. We passed by Celeste and Camilla talking in the kitchen. Camilla was on her tablet making notes, while Celeste was talking about something with fire damage. Celeste was making sandwiches for lunch. Camilla stopped talking the moment Celeste greeted us. I thought it was weird, since she'd been nothing but friendly since that first night, but maybe the hormones from her pregnancy was making her anger flare up. I let the thought flutter away when I saw her smiling at us. Celeste winked at me when she saw my hand around Natalia's waist. Perfect timing. You guys can take their breakfast sandwiches down. They are used to you, Natalia, and since Marcus will only let me go down with 5 warriors, they are not as comfortable talking to me yet. Nat, if you could talk to him for me. I am not made of crystal and they will never trust us if I always have an army around me. I'm not getting between a pregnant Luna and her alpha mate Celeste, but maybe you can come down with us. Helios has his alpha aura. He can make them stop if things get out of hand and your Luna aura is pretty strong, Natalia suggested. Celeste looked contemplative and then her eyes glazed over. A minute later, she huffed and crossed her arms and I could guess how the conversation went. Less than a minute after that, Marcus walked in. He didn't look very happy. "Let's go," he said. "Marcus, I can take care of myself," Celeste growled. "I know to lie, but I would feel more comfortable if we went together. They need to trust us both, don't they?" he asked, shooting me a silent plea of help. I would have laughed if I didn't have my own stubborn mate now. "Well, if that's settled, let's go feed some hungry shifters," I said. Celeste growled lowly but decided not to argue. We grabbed the trays of food and headed down the steps. The basement was big. Marcus told me it was part of the Warriors' suites before he had expanded the pack house and built the Warriors' apartments adjacent to the pack house. It had sat mostly empty for about 2 years before he'd brought in some couches, movie screens and some TVs with game consoles for the teens to have a place to hang out after school and on the weekends. The newer wing in the basement had been turned into a gym. Currently, most of the rooms were occupied by the rescued shifters. While they weren't prisoners, some of them were prone to agitation and I had been told of a few pack members that had gotten hurt trying to get them to calm down. They were not allowed out of the basement unless accompanied by a warrior. The couches and TVs remained, but he had removed most of the weights and heavy equipment from the gym side to make room. He'd left the treadmills and cardio equipment and placed some dining tables. We all knew this couldn't go on for a lot longer, but we needed them to calm down first. Marcus and I had spoken about putting them in a couple of houses once the therapists found it appropriate. We didn't know how long they would have to remain here. Thankfully and unfortunately, after freeing Celeste's people from Blood Moon, they were probably the pack best equipped to deal with people with trauma. They had 2 pack therapists and medical professionals with experience of bringing abused and malnourished people back to health. The level of empathy and patience that the girls and women had shown towards them contributed a lot to how well they were transitioning back to normalcy. There were about 10 people on the couches watching TV. Some of them were a few that the therapists said could be moved out of the basement, but they had chosen to stay to help the others. We were splitting them into groups of 4 to go take some walks around the pack and these guys helped keep them calm to prevent them from trying to run away. Marcus had vehemently opposed the council's recommendation that we put the problem shifters in the cells. We took the trays of food over to the tables for them, but no one seemed to bother with them. They all swarmed towards Natalia and I stood defensively in front of her in panic. More shifters came out of their room and approached as they heard the commotion. They stopped, feeling my alpha aura spread through the room. I still needed to learn to control it a bit better and Ezekiel was not helping by growling in the back of my head. "We would just like to thank her, Alpha. We mean her no harm. She sacrificed her own health for ours," one of them said as they bared their necks to me. I felt Natalia's hand on my back and my stance relaxed. "Just, not all at once. She just woke up," I said and moved to her side. One by one, people came over and thanked her, asking her if she was all right. She was getting a little flustered, so I ran small circles on her lower back to soothe her nerves. I saw Celeste walking over to one of the women. She was huddled in a corner. She bent down and spoke to her for a while Marcus waited behind her. When she got up, the woman hung to her waist as Celeste walked with Marcus towards us. "Would some of you like to join us on a walk in the grounds?" The council is coming to help you find your way back home, so we would prefer you don't try to run away, but it's a beautiful day outside. Some of the shifters looked interested and a few looked our way hesitantly. Celeste's and Natalia's eyes glazed over, clearly having a conversation together. I didn't know they had gotten close enough to Natalia's gift to allow them to mind link. Why don't we all have breakfast outside? There's some nice tables in the backyard, Natalia said, and the shifters looked more excited at that. We grabbed the food and drinks and made our way up the stairs. A few Crescent Moon Pack members were surprised to see them coming out of the basement and gave us a wide berth. Celeste asked a few people to join us, who hesitated but obeyed their Luna. Their trust in her was absolute. I mind-linked the boys to join us. Marie and Maya joined us a little while later, all 3 children in their strollers. Marcus didn't allow the kids to wonder, but allowed the shifters to approach once he was satisfied that they were calm. The children had an immediate effect on most of them, drawing smiles as they cooed and babbled. I did see one crying silently at the table and I heard her tell Maya that when she was taken, she had a cub. She was one of the few shifters that had been caged the longest. For about 7 years, she had felt her bond snap 5 years ago. She didn't know what had happened to her baby. I could sense Celeste's Luna aura blanket the shifters any time that she sensed someone becoming agitated. It soothed and calmed them, often enough recognizing her energy and sending a grateful look her way. About an hour later, 2 wolves came up to us on the table. I could tell by the way the others quieted down expectantly, that this would be important. Helios POV, we were wondering if we could speak with all of you. The man looked to be about 30 and spoke with an accent I couldn't quite place. I deferred the question to Marcus, as he was technically in charge of them. Have a seat, Marcus answered. The 2 men sat and looked around nervously. Don't be afraid. We're here to help you. What are your names? I'm sorry, I haven't memorized everyone's faces yet, Celeste encouraged. My name is Jonah, Luna Celeste. The one with the accent said, before elbowing the nervous man next to him. I'm Nicholas. His English was definitely American. We have been talking and we were wondering if we could change a few things, Jonah started. To make things easier for us, Nicholas continued. Jonah looked at Natalia and me and when I nodded at him to continue, he said, some of us are having trouble being cooped up downstairs. Not that we don't know why we have to stay down there. We don't have a problem being there, but we think some of us would do better if we could change the way we're set up downstairs. Nicholas finished for him. What did you have in mind? Zach, can you get us some paper and pencils? Marcus asked. Well, some of us have been getting used to being in our own room just fine, but we wake up to some of the others freaking out in the darkness of their room. We were hoping we could either set up some beds in some part of the open areas with more light for people that need more reassurance and reminder of where they are at. Nicholas looked at us nervously, as if waiting for us to say no. We could do that. We have a few bunk beds from when we rescued the girls from Blood Moon. We could set them up, but how many would want to sleep like that? Marcus asked the rest of the table. Or, Celeste said, maybe we should remove the doors from some of the bedrooms and set up a bunk bed to buddy up. That way, people have their own space and a safety buddy, depending on what they want, we could have 2 bunk beds to a room for those that need that sense of comfort and some of those light dimmers in the rooms so they can choose how much darkness they can tolerate. Yeah, that would work. If it's not too much trouble. To be honest, Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. Some people sneak into other rooms, but since we've got single beds, they end up asleep on the floor. When we rescued my friends from Blood Moon, they would do that too. I think it's a safety in numbers thing. Celeste nodded in understanding. Would you prefer the rooms without doors or bunching all the beds in the living space? Marcus asked the rest of the table. There were a few mumbles and then I felt Natalia stand up on my side. Show of hands for rooms without doors and buddy bunk beds, she asked, and everyone raised their hands. There you go, Marcus. She smiled and sat back down. Marcus stood up then. I'll get a few people down there to remove the doors and set up the bunk beds. If you have a person you'd like to bunk with, please let Luna Celeste or Gamma Maya know and we'll try our best to set you up with those you feel safest with. If you are comfortable with sleeping alone or want to keep your door, let Zach or Gabriel know so they can make sure you're comfortable. You are our guests. We want to make sure you feel safe and comfortable. Please, don't be afraid to let us know what we can do to help you. He sits back down and addresses Jonah and Nicholas. Were there any other things you wanted to discuss? Yes, You're an alpha, right? Jonah turned to me. I nodded. You don't have a pack though? You're here at his pack house. We are a new pack. It's a long story, but my home blew up when I got taken to the lab and we need to find permanent lodgings. Alpha Marcus has been kind enough to house us until we do. He nodded. I remember you in the lab. His eyes went to Natalia briefly and I tried not to let Ezekiel's jealousy ooze out because a man was looking at our mate. The look didn't even seem like an interested look, just curious. She is your mate? She has the aura of a Luna, but she's not marked. She is, I said, trying not to growl. Ezekiel was demanding that I put Natalia on my lap so they didn't look at her anymore, but I was doing my best to ignore his suggestions. It wouldn't help anyone if we growled at anyone that looked at her and I'm sure it wouldn't go over very well with Natalia. Sorry, I mean no disrespect. This is going to sound crazy, but we trust her. She healed the ones at the lab, and the others say she brought down food for them when they were rescued. We were wondering. We were hoping, he said nervously. Being part of a pack, even if it's just temporary, will help us feel safe. We miss that connection. That sense of belonging, Nicholas finished. We were hoping you would allow us to join your pack for a bit. Some of us that have been without a pack for longer are scared of our wolves going rogue. I was glad to see that I was not the only one surprised at that. We mean no offense, Alpha Marcus, Luna Celeste, Jonah added, thinking they had offended their hosts. We are very thankful that you have taken us in and rescued us, but you don't have to explain. You are not offending us. We are happy you feel comfortable with them. Celeste interrupted, and when Marcus nodded, Jonah and Nicholas looked relieved. They turned to look at us, waiting for a response. You should do it. If it helps them. I know we feel more connected to each other now that we're a pack, Gonzalo mind-linked me. I added Theo, Sebastian, and Natalia to the mind link. my connection to her allowing me to put all of us in one mind link. Would everyone be okay with this? They need a lot of help, and will technically be responsible for them until they find their homes. It will add more to everyone's plate, I asked. We can handle it. Besides, I doubt Celeste and Marcus will stop helping just because they have joined our pack. We'll find our footing, like we always do. Theo said. I don't have any inspirational words like Theo, but I'm in. Natalia laughed at Theo. What Nat said, Sebastian added. I ended the mind link and looked down the table. Anyone that wants to join our pack, let me know by tomorrow morning. We'll get the formalities out of the way tomorrow afternoon. There were relieved looks from a lot of people and nods. Was there something else? No, those were the two big things, Alpha. Thank you. Jonah and Nicholas stood up and went back to their seats. I'm going to need you to teach me how to induct people into the pack, Marcus, I whispered, and Marcus laughed. Well, you are going to need a pack name first, then we can deal with the rest. It's a small enough ceremony. Are there requirements for a pack name? That's a good question. We can go look at the council rules if you want. He asked. I would appreciate that, I said, getting up. Pack meeting in half an hour to come up with a name. I said to the rest. Yes, Alpha, they said, and I rolled my eyes. I'll be fine, love. The others are here and they are enjoying the nice day out, Celeste said as Marcus stood up. Okay, but if one of them gets agitated, let Gabriel or Zach help them, okay? Just use your aura to help. I don't want anything happening to you. Marcus kissed Celeste before joining me. What, don't I get a kiss? Natalia asked via mind link. I looked down at where she was looking up at me with an amused look on her face. I knew she was teasing me, but the joke was on her. I bent down and grabbed her, brought her up flush against my chest and crushed my lips to her, letting Ezekiel's jealousy fuel the possessive kiss. I smirked at her as I pulled away, happy to see her dazed look and blush. You really shouldn't poke the wolf, Amor. It's hard enough to keep my hands to myself in public, I mind-linked as I left with Marcus. Theo, Sebastian, and Gonzalo were all giving me thumbs-ups and grins. Duly noted, Alpha, she responded. We went up to the third-floor offices. Marcus printed 2 copies of the rules and we sat down to find the section for new pack requirements. This was more complicated than I thought and I was getting a headache just thinking about it. You tricked me, sister. Your punishment was endless paperwork and bureaucratic red tape? How does anyone have enough of these requirements to become a sanctioned pack? I asked Marcus in frustration. I need to have a drive and a hospital for every 1,000 members with 10 to 20 registered nurses depending on size. Schools for packs bigger than 500. How does anyone become a sanctioned pack with these things? I don't know. It takes a long time to grow a pack to that size. I was lucky enough to inherit this pack. We'll help you, Helios. It might just happen a little further away than in the next month, he said honestly. I sighed. Can you print out a few more copies of this document and a couple of applications? I want to go over all of this with everyone. Yeah, why don't you talk it over with everyone? The most urgent thing right now is the name. The rest can wait, but once you have a list of what you need, we can meet and come up with a plan. I appreciate all your help, Marcus. I really do. Marcus nodded and handed me the papers. I think these guys having someone they feel will protect them at all costs will be great for them. Feeling safe does a lot for people. The women from Blood Moon only felt safe once they realized how much everyone went through to help them, and it was much easier for them to heal when they realized they weren't alone. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. I really hope I don't do this, I confessed. You led your warriors for years. The fact that most of them are coming back tells me that you were already their alpha long before you became shifters. You know how to do this already. Then he smirked, plus you have your Luna. You will be amazed how far that goes with a pack. I grinned, she's giving me a chance, which is more than I could have hoped for. Yeah, well, I figured she would. She was ready to rip Celeste's head off when she tried to get her to stop healing you at the compound. That's how we found out she was your mate. I didn't know that. I did wonder why the guys didn't seem surprised that she was my mate that day at the lab. I said. Marcus nodded and then I saw his eyes glaze over. I gotta go deal with some stuff for Celeste. Let me know once you have a name and have gone over that list. We can brainstorm how to get what you need. Will do. I said as I walked out, mind linking the others to meet me in the first floor conference room. We had a lot of work ahead of us. Natalia POV. What about New Moon? We're new shifters. Theo said. New Wolf Pack, White Wolf Pack, Aztec Moon Pack. Sebastian proposed. We have all been going on and on for about 2 hours now trying to figure out a name. We're all frustrated and annoyed. Nothing seemed to fit. Aztec Moon might be a good one, but all these other guys that are about to join might feel excluded. Gonzalo said, and we all nodded our heads. What about Hunter Moon? I suggested. Helios shook his head, we're not hunters anymore. We are trying to do the opposite, we're trying to save these people. But we're hunting the bad guys. I argued. What about Redemption Moon? That's what Selene said. Find your redemption, brother, Theo said. I don't like that. It makes it sound like we're bad people, and we're not, I said. I got it. Sebastian is practically jumping on the balls of his feet. He's been pacing the entire room for the last half an hour, much to the annoyance of everyone. Well, spit it out so we can move on, I said. Okay, so we're all agreed? Here's our to-do list, Helios summarized an hour later. We need to find a place for the pack. Gonzalo will start looking at properties. We have to narrow down the state/city in the next few days. Since we're taking on the shifters on a temporary basis, I'll talk to Marcus about therapists. If there are any coming with us when we leave, we can ask the council to assist us in finding some we can contract on a temporary or permanent basis. Sebastian, you are, as usual, in charge of security. You can reach out to Evergreen once we find the property. I'll start setting up some bank accounts for pack business and talk to Marcus about what the best way is to approach that. Natalia, you can start setting up the pack files. Celeste had already volunteered to help and she said Evergreen set up software for her to make it easier. To start, we'll need basic information, previous occupations, clothes size, and most urgent needs. You and Theo can start looking at retail places that we can use to furnish once we have a location. We'll need pretty much everything in large quantities. The most urgent items will be beds, couches, etc. Helios pulled a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted and overwhelmed. The requirements to become a new pack were a little ridiculous. I'll talk to Marcus about how to best go about finding a doctor, some nurses, and becoming our sponsor. Wouldn't that require us to stay nearby? Gonzalo asked. I don't know. It's possible. There's not much in the way of instructions for it. Would anyone be opposed to that? He asked. It would be nice to be close, Theo finally said. I kind of enjoy the little chilpayates, children, running around. I'll start looking around the area. Gonzalo agreed. Helios sighed, and I'll ask Marcus if he minds. Anything else we're missing? Yes, I said. What's that? He asked. You need something other than jeans to meet the council and I only have leggings. I pointed at my legs. I had only bought about 5 changes of clothing when we went to the mall. Helios turned to look at Gonzalo. We need cars, too. 2 to start. We'll all share until we're better settled. We don't want to flood their garage with too many cars. We're already taking up so much of their space. I can take care of that. My workload won't start until after we've found a property, so I can deal with the cars. Any preference? Theo said. No sports cars for now. SUVs. We're on basic needs until we sort out the rest, Helios said. He turned to look at me. Do you want to go buy some clothes together or do you want to grab Celeste? I am not the best shopper. Theo laughed. That's an understatement. The man is miserable after one store. I've been filling his closet for the last couple of centuries. Helios looked embarrassed at that. I laughed. I'll ask Celeste if she's available. Or at least ask for a car. I'll go with you and grab Helios a couple of formal clothes. Theo called as I left the room. I found Celeste in their 3rd floor offices. She was speaking with Camilla and Marcus about some sort of renovations. They quieted when I entered and I felt like I was interrupting. Sorry, I was wondering if you had some time for me to borrow you in a car. I asked. Of course. Can I bring the pups? And Gabriel and Brenda are kind of a mandatory must-haves right now, she said. Yes, the more the merrier. I could use a couple of opinions. Great. I'll get them ready. Oh, where are we off to? The mall. I need some clothes. Celeste pursed her mouth at my answer and Marcus and Camilla burst out laughing. What did I say? Celeste hates shopping, Camilla said. Oh, I can just borrow a car. Theo said he's coming with, thinking about how she and Helios were like 2 peas in a pod sometimes. No, it's okay. As long as I don't have to try on the clothes myself, I don't mind it. I could use the break. I need to deal with a couple of things and I'll get the pups ready and I'll meet you downstairs in an hour. Sounds good, I said and went back down to my room. I still had some money Helios had given me. I went in to find Helios pushing the couch back into the original spot. The laptop on the desk had been moved to the coffee table and the desk was against the wall to make room for the couch. "Hi," I said as I watched the muscles in his arms flex under the tight sleeves. "Did you talk to Celeste?" he asked while he finished moving the couch. At Hestia's encouragement, I walked towards him with a little more sway to my hips than necessary. I saw his eyes darken as he stood behind the couch. "Yes, she's got some stuff to do, so I've got an hour," I purred as I stopped in front of him. He stepped forward and put his hands on my hips and pressed me against him. "What are you planning on doing for an hour?" he asked as he laid gentle kisses on my ear. I moved my head to give him more access to my neck as I let my hand travel down his chest and over his hardening manhood. "I'm open to ideas," I whispered, and he growled approvingly and pushed me onto the back of the couch. I wrapped my legs around his waist and tilted my head back with a moan as he began sucking on the crux of my neck. He began moving his lips down towards my breast and I leaned back a little more, letting my hands rest at the top of the back of the couch for support. "Okay Helios, let's move that." "Oh sorry," came Sebastian's voice from the door. Helios' head popped up and he stood up straight and my entire torso fell backwards on the couch. My legs were still wrapped around Helios and I ended up with my head on the cushions of the couch upside down. Sebastian's face came into view and I watched as he went from embarrassed panic to hysterical laughter in under a minute. I heard a growl coming from Helios and I tried to look up at him. His face was adorably red and I couldn't tell if he was embarrassed or angry that we had been interrupted. "A little help?" I asked, and I watched him realize the position I was stuck in and he pulled me up to a sitting position again. "Sorry," he told me, then addressed Sebastian. "Stop laughing Sebastian, and help me with the desk," he snapped. I unwrapped my legs around him and he looked at me longingly as I pushed my shirt down. "Don't get mad at me, Alpha. You told me to come up for the desk. How was I supposed to know I would be interrupting?" He winked at me as he passed by and I rolled my eyes. "I'm going to go tell Theo to get ready," I said. "Come back soon. I want to talk to you." Helios' husky voice flittered into my head. I felt a jolt of lust rush through my body. "Will there be an audience this time?" I teased. He only growled in my head and I laughed as I cut off the mind link. I found Theo downstairs grabbing a set of keys from Marcus. Marcus turned to me when he saw me coming down the stairs. "Celeste will be ready in about 10 minutes. Try to have some fun. I've convinced her to leave the pups with me. She really needs an outing. I'm struggling to get her to leave the kids for very long. Going to the compound was the first time I managed to get her away from them for more than 24 hours and I'm hoping to convince her to take a weekend out of town for the honeymoon. I want her to see we can still have some fun once in a while. I'll be sure to keep her until dinner then," I said. "Thanks. Gabriel will be coming with you, but Brenda will remain on pack grounds." I nodded. "I'll go get my purse. Can you ask Celeste to meet us out front?" Marcus nodded and I went back up to the room. Sebastian was walking down towards the stairs as I approached and he gave me a deep bow as I passed. "All yours, Luna." I bumped him as hard as I could with my hip and he fell all the way down with a laugh. I entered the room and the desk was gone. Helios was sitting on the couch with his laptop on a small TV dinner tray, clacking away. The moment he saw me come in, his eyes darkened. He stood up and walked towards me like a lion stalks a lamb. He pushed me against the closed door and I heard the click of the lock before he smashed his lips to mine. I gulped some serious air once he let me back up to breathe and tried to hold in a moan as his mouth made its way towards me. "Ce Celeste is waiting for me," I managed to get out and he groaned, burying his face in the crook on my neck. "I thought you had an hour," he whined. "That's when she was bringing the pups. Marcus is keeping them so she can have some fun." "What about my fun?" He pouted as he lifted his head to look into my eyes. "I'm sure you'll survive. You have a lot of work before tomorrow's ceremony and before the council gets here to keep you busy." "Humph," he grumbled as he let me move past him. I went towards the nightstand and grabbed the wallet from the drawer. "Here, it will have to do until we get everything set up. The code is 0293. I turned around to see him holding a credit card. I raised an eyebrow. "You're trusting me with your credit card? What if I go on a shopping spree and spend 10,000? He shrugged. "You have no clothes, eventually you'll need a shopping spree. I would wait until we get a pack house so we don't have to pack all the clothes, but if you're willing to pack it all yourself, go nuts." I took the credit card from his hand and slapped it on my hand thoughtfully. I did love shopping sprees. "Finally," I huffed, "I hate packing." He grinned at my response before he pulled me in for a kiss that I felt to the tip of my toes. "Have fun. Don't let Theo get carried away either. I only need like 3 formal changes of clothes for now and a few more jeans and shirts," he said. "Helios POV, this place is full of cock blockers," Ezekiel whined. "We do need to get a lot of work done," I pointed out. "We get this done and we can have some free time when she comes back." "Fine, wake me when you're done," he said as he curled up in the back of my head. "Aren't you going to help? This is a lot of information," I asked. "Saving my efforts for our mate," he said and yawned. "Like you help in that department?" I smirked. "I provide encouragement and advice," he said indignantly. "Can we meet her wolf soon? If we're waiting for her to be ready to accept our mark, I would like to at least run with her. We can ask her tonight," I suggested, and he wagged his tail as he fell asleep. I sighed and went to work. There was so much paperwork. I managed to fill out most of the application, but it didn't look good in the end. There were a lot of empty spaces. I set up an appointment with Marcus Accountants for the pack accounts for next week. The biggest blaring issue was space. So much depended on it. After I got frustrated, I took a walk with my tablet while perusing listings for the area. "Do you want to go over the wording for tomorrow's ceremony now?" Celeste was thinking we could do a small celebration afterwards, Marcus asked as I walked into the living room on the first floor. The pups were sleeping in their stroller. I nodded and pulled up the notepad app on the tablet. "It's fairly simple. They have to officially denounce their previous pack. The connection is probably really weak for most, but it needs to happen unless they were rogues already. They need to say, 'I, full name, do hereby renounce my allegiance to the name of pack.' After they complete that, they have to swear their fealty to your pack. It's also fairly simple. You will say, 'Do you swear your fealty to, did you pick a pack name?' He asked and I nodded. 'Do you swear fealty to pack name, to follow, represent and obey the rules of the pack and respect all members of the pack?' After they accept, you make a small cut on your hand and you grasp hands to allow the blood to mix. That creates the pack link between you and the pack, and that's it. Rinse and repeat until you're done inducting everyone. Sounds simple enough. There was something I wanted to ask before the council got here, I said a bit nervously. Yes, we'll be your sponsor, he said, and then smirked when he saw the surprise in my eyes. I read the requirements too. I leaned back and let out a breath. Well, thanks, because I don't know any other werewolves by name. He chuckled, everything will fall into place. Just give it time. How do you even do it? It's exhausting and I haven't even started. My pack was already established by the time I became alpha, and my father taught me to deal with pack matters since I was 12. I did a lot of work when I took over to grow it, but the hard parts were done. I looked at my watch, it's been a few hours. Shouldn't they be back by now? Natalia said she would only be buying a few sets. She was keeping Celeste out of the house until dinner. Celeste texted a while ago asking after the pups and said Natalia asked her to get pedicures. It was kind of a favor to me. She rarely goes anywhere and I wanted her to have some fun. Why won't she go anywhere? Pack duties are never ending and she is a good mom. We have someone to take care of all the ranked pups throughout the day, but both her and Maya prefer to be more hands-on. Not a bad thing, but she had a hard life before I found her and I would like her to experience things she's missed. Hard to do when you're stuck at home, he sighed. I don't want her to ever resent having pups this early in her life. I don't think she will. Celeste may have missed out on a lot, being a slave to Alpha Jeff, but above all, she just wants a family that loves her, and that is what your pack gave her. That said, I agree that it's good for her to get off the pack grounds on occasion. Now, do you have any idea of any property suitable for a new pack with room for expansion? I said, picking up my tablet again. It will all work out, Helios. Trust your sister, Marcus laughed, just relax until tomorrow. I sighed and closed the tablet. I did trust Gonzalo to find us a suitable place. I was just really anxious about all the stuff that needed to get done. What have you got going on for the next while? I asked him. I'm trying to find a suitable gift for Celeste. Her birthday is in 3 days and I'm out of ideas. There's no way to top last year. At this point I'm going to give her an IOU coupon book like the teenagers do these days, he chuckles. There's some Notches Luminarias thing at the Botanical Gardens in Phoenix. I saw them last year. It's pretty and it's not too far away. We can babysit for you. Make it a day with an overnight. I am not sure she would go for overnight without the pups. If the young girl weren't in danger, I wouldn't have gotten her to go to California. Dad said it's a new mom thing, but if it's in the gardens, I may be able to convince her to go and take the pups. We can take the stroller, can't we? It's a big nature walk in essence. Plenty of room. I said. How are things going with Natalia? He asked. Better. I think we ran circles around each other for the whole first month. No one giving the other any information about who we were to protect ourselves, I sighed. It's a little overwhelming. Having a voice in my head, shifting, pack, mate. I am hoping I don't do it all. Just keep trying. People meet you halfway when they see you trying. Marcus said. Alpha, the cameras are back on, Evergreen's voice came from behind me. You're going to want to see this. Sebastian, Gonzalo. Meet us at Evergreen's conference room, I mind-linked as we stood up. We made our way to the room where the conference TV was displaying the camera feeds of the lab. There was a clean-up crew in most of the rooms. My eyes immediately zeroed in on following one man in a suit that appeared to be in charge. There are 3 other men behind him walking with their heads down and warriors to either side of him. One of the men with his head low seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. Danny, Jillian, Sebastian, and Gonzalo all came in around the same time. What are we looking at? Sebastian asked. Anything that stands out to you? Evergreen, you've got facial recognition going. Marcus asked. Can't until the feed makes it up to their cloud, Alpha. If I try to access the feed through the software, they'll find our access and follow it back to us. We don't need facial recognition for this guy, Gonzalo said, pointing at the man that looked familiar, Blake Castor. He is the general manager of our shipping yard. He oversees the receipt of the shipments and dispatches our drivers to deliver them to the clients. He has been working at the company for about 25 years. We couldn't find anything abnormal with him at the time we were looking for the mole. Clearly, we missed something, he sighed. Evergreen, if we can get you access to his computer, are you able to see if you can find out who these people are? I asked. You already have access, Sebastian said. Evergreen installed his security package at the company. We should have access to all his emails, company phones, and incoming and outgoing phone calls if he keeps his personal phone on the network while at work. We just have to give him the new access information so he can log in. Do it, there was audio coming from the TV suddenly. I turned to look at Evergreen with a questioning look. One of the warriors is logged into their network. I hacked his phone. Whatever we're listening to is what's happening right now. He grinned at me. Or he can do that, Sebastian laughed. We watched in silence as they walked the building. It had been almost a week and I took satisfaction that some were trying not to retch at the smell. All of the computer towers were taken, sir. One of the cleaners came over to the suited man. Backups. This place was in an enclosed network. Backups were local. The servers were also taken, sir. Everyone took a step back as the man thought over what had just been said. He turned around to look at Blake. Do you have any idea how much research was just lost? You were in charge of this shipment. You assured me everything went well. What happened? We take one Tiger shifter and suddenly we lose a decade's worth of research. Everything went to end after I promoted you over him that sold the shipping company. Explain how we were found out. Blake only trembled, unable to answer. Well? Don't make me ask twice. The shipment was delivered to the auction successfully. This wasn't my fault. Sir, please, I have a family. Blake was visibly shaking now. Who else could be behind these attacks? The suited man asked them. Sir, the man that was in here being questioned at the time of the attack was also the man that bought some of the shifters, but he was in no condition to be the one to do this sort of damage. The other spoke. What do we know about him? The suited man replied. The man with the clipboard looked through a file. His name is Ramon de la Luz. He owned a bunch of shipping companies in the 90s. He made a lot of money in the stock market and retired in his early 40s. We couldn't find much in the way of history for them outside of that: birth certificate, last residence, passport information. He keeps a private life. The suited man followed up with, "Where is he now?" "Unknown, like I said. He was in here getting questioned for some purchases at the last auction. He was here for weeks before the raid. It's possible he was just taken along with the other shifters." I let out of a breath I didn't know I had been holding. "At least they can't find us yet." "How did anyone find out about this facility?" the suited man asked. "We're not sure, sir. The lights were severed before they arrived, so we have no idea who or how many came through," one of the men answered. The suited man was playing with the sleeves of his suit when he asked, "Any other facility get hit?" "No, but..." he asked when the man hesitated. "One of the buyers in the last shipment had his compound breached. He sent an email requesting replacements. He was willing to pay twice what Mr. de la Luz paid for the wolf and leopards. Mr. de la Luz was grabbed so he could be convinced to give the animals back, but he refused." "The animals he bought, were they all animals or shifters?" the man in the suit asked while rolling up his sleeves now. The man looked at his clipboard again. "We think the leopard cats were just animals, sir. They didn't have the size usual for shifters, but the white wolf was most definitely a shifter by the size metrics on the manifest." He was not allowed to finish his sentence before the suited man interrupted him. "Did you just say white wolf?" "Why, yes, sir," he stammered. "And you're sure it was a shifter?" We could see the change in the man's demeanor and everyone around him. "Not 100% sure. It never shifted, but it was too big to be a normal wolf. There's also not many white wolves native to Korea," the now petrified man explained. "Why was it sold then? Do you know what you gave up?" "My grandfather has a standing commission bonus of $100 million for anyone that would lead to the capture of a white shifter wolf. A white wolf would have sped up our research exponentially." I growled lowly as I heard him yell. Ezekiel was raging with anger and need to protect our mate. "I'm so..." Before the man could even finish, a claw extended and cut the throat of the man. He turned to the next and did the same. Two of them tried to run, but he was on them within seconds. At the end, only one remained. The man straightened his hair and suit before he turned to the last man standing. "Find the white wolf. Grab whoever you need to. Nothing else matters right now. We need the white wolf. She is the key." He walked away from the dead man with the cell phone and we lost audio. He gave some sort of instructions that we couldn't hear to the cleaners and his car came around the front as he rolled his sleeves back into place and he was driven out of the research lab. We stood in silence as we processed what we had just heard and watched. The man experimenting on shifters appeared to be a shifter as well. He was experimenting on his own kind and wanted my mate. "I'll keep recording until they are done." Evergreen was the first to speak and then the TV image split and there was some sort of running software. "I should be able to have the encryption cracked in a few hours. It's taken a few new tricks to crack it. This is one of the more complex encryptions I've seen, that wasn't created by me, of course," he said. "Let us know when it's done." We need to find out what kind of experiments a shifter is running on other shifters and what exactly they want with Natalia. Marcus said, making me growl. We won't let anything happen to her, Helios. You have our support. The council will see all of this and reach out to other shifter councils. This is a problem for all shifters and the vampires. Everyone will be hunting down them soon. I nod gratefully at him. Sebastian, text Theo and make sure he knows Natalia is currently a target. He needs to be on alert, though I doubt they will find us in under an hour. She won't be able to leave the grounds without guards anymore. I pulled a hand through my hair, knowing she might not be happy about that. Go through Blake's devices please Evergreen. See if anyone else in my company is involved. Gonzalo, you'll take point in the company for now. I need to remain unseen since they weren't sure if I had anything to do with the raid. They might eventually connect Ramon to the owner of the shipping company and I won't make it easy for them to find us. I turned to Marcus. I would like us to join your training sessions. None of us have any training as wolves. I got that one Alpha, Danny said. Trainings are every morning from 7 to 12. Advanced is from 3 to 5. You can all begin tomorrow and we'll move you to advanced if needed after I assess you. You're an Alpha, so you can train with Marcus after basics. Natalia will train as well. I told him and he only nodded. My phone dinged. Natalia, Theo looks like they just took away his puppy. Everything okay? Me, it is okay for now, but we have some developments. We can talk about it after dinner. I'm going to go finish some paperwork. Gonzalo, can you check in with our warriors coming back? We need to know when we can expect them and if they've brought anyone with them. Yes, Alpha. I headed up to my room and completed some paperwork as I waited for Natalia to come back. Ezekiel was pacing in my head. Now that she was the target, we weren't comfortable with her being so far away from us. The door opened 20 minutes later and we breathed a sigh of relief as she walked through the door. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.